Hey everybody, it's Peter again, and here I am with some speakers that I didn't build. So I thought I'd make a video about how I did this. I took a pair, these are JBL 4309s, nice little monitors. I had them in the house for a while, and I guess you have to know this. I have a parade of speakers through my house, it seemed like. So I'll try things. I like listening to different things. I like experimenting with stuff. So that's kind of my bottom line. And so things go in and out of my audio world, and I guess nothing is really permanent. But so what I decided to do with these, and consequently show you how, was to do this stenciling. Now I'm really drawn to Art Deco design, which this is sort of in the spirit of. And so I looked online at some illustrations and got some inspiration to actually create this design. So unlike another video I did where I utilized a design that someone else had drawn, this is my creation. So why that even makes a difference is if you decide to do this for yourself and you want to use this design, just email me and I will give it to you. I will give it to you in the way of an EPS file, which is something you could take to a vinyl cutter, a sign shop, someplace like that, and they could make a stencil just like they did for me. That's exactly what I did here, and I don't know if you can see those, but you'll see that soon enough. And so if you like the idea of personalizing something of your own, maybe this is a way you can do it. So you don't even have to have built speakers. You could perhaps do something to ones you already own or you intend to own or something like that. So that's kind of the story of what's going on here, and let me gather some stuff up here and we'll get started. It's not a particularly hard process, not even a really long process, but I want to make sure I give you good instructions as always. So you know it'll be longer than some people like, but that just seems to be my MO. So I'll be right back. Here's what you need to get this done. Well, first of all, you need whatever you're going to do it to. So let's see. Masking tape. I like microfiber rags. I'll show you where I use that. At the end of it, I actually kind of buff it with a microfiber. The idea is to make this look kind of like gilding without going through the process of gilding. So masking tape, I use a tape gun. You don't need that for sure. Two things that I would suggest is a white Scotch-Brite and a red Scotch-Brite. This is called a scuff pad, and that will actually give some tooth for the paint to adhere to. White Scotch-Brite is actually more of a polishing pad. It does not have any abrasive in it. My understanding is the only abrasive quality it has is the actual fiber that makes that up. And I'm going to use that on the surfaces that on these three surfaces because they're exposed. And these speakers, when I got them, were one you could definitely feel had a little bit of overspray on it. Not unusual, and probably that's hair splitting for a lot of people, but since I'm here doing it, I like to kind of start with a clean slate so I know both speakers are exactly the same in the way of polish. So let's just dive right in here and I'm going to show you how I do it. Oh, and you'll need the stencil. Sorry, I showed that a little earlier. I don't know if that shows up for the camera, but you'll see when I put it on. It's that design in the way of a stencil. So with a white polishing pad, like I said, this is not very abrasive. I mean, it's probably something like the back of your hand or maybe even a microfiber cloth. But all I'm doing, and on this speaker there's really not any masking to do because I'm not going to roll over the edge or anything. So all I'm doing is going back and forth across the grain 3 or 4 times. And that brings the sheen of that up just a little bit. And it is a tiny amount, but that way I know they exactly match, because most things like this are not going to be a perfect sheen match, or like right there I can feel a little bit of roughness. This will make that go away. And it's just from the normal way they finish furniture. And I know this looks like I'm probably damaging it, but it's actually finishing the finish, as they say. And that has a lot nicer hand after I've done that. So it's a polishing step. And of course the yoga pad, you'll see me using those a lot, is optional. I kind of like them for stuff like this. Alrighty, so that does not take long, and it's not even an absolute necessity. I do it because I'm fussy, and if you watch my videos, you know that about me. So the next thing to do is to figure out the placement of the stencils, and in this case, they are exactly the width of the side here. And there's about 3/8 of an inch between the end of the stencil and the side of the speaker there. So what I'm going to do is make kind of a hinge. And, you know, first thing I'll probably do is just tape it down on there so it won't go anyplace. So get it centered up, top to bottom, side to side. And if you have stencils like this made, you can specify how big you want the design, how big you want the background, and that's something I do when I talk to the guys at the sign shop. I've got a sign shop here in town. It says Signs Now, and I've done this a few times with them, so I know what they want in the way of information. And so I send them an EPS file, which is kind of a universal thing that they can deal with real easily, and then tell them what I want, and they just cut it for me, and a couple days later I just go pick it up. So what I'm doing is making sure that's where I want it, and then, oh, and the other thing I'll need, and they actually give me these at the sign shop there, it's a squeegee. And there's a few ways to do this, but I would suggest that you don't do, try and take all the release paper off and then try and stick it on there. Almost always that's going to create a wrinkle or something somewhere, and there's a lot of small details in this design, in many designs. So going from one end to the other is a better plan. And the reason I put these pieces of tape down here is this is going to locate this. I can pick it up at the opposite end, and I'll show you what I do here. So I just peel back. Huh. Well, I'm upside down there. Let's do that again. So same thing all over again, this time with the stencil the right side down. Okay, this will work better. So this stencil is made or cut from what they call low-tack vinyl, which is used for spray masks and things like that, specifically because It's not made to be permanent. And that's kind of important because it's not going to be permanent. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking some of that back, folding it back so it's kind of out of my way. And then I can just bring this right down onto the surface, and I'm hinging off of that masking tape I put on the bottom. And just lightly touching that down. That way I can sort of control how I do the rest of it. So now I've got a hinge point up here. I can take this off. And I just push that down with my finger. You can also use a squeegee. So the idea here is to work it out this way, and that way you're taking any air bubbles as you go. You can also look at the design. Some designs have little details that you want to make sure don't stay with this. This one has some fine points, but not a lot of little details, and you can see that happening. And so what I'm doing is just rolling that out and pushing this squeegee against it as I go, and that keeps it being pushed down and the backing coming off all kind of simultaneously. That's kind of annoying, but part of the drill, I guess. Oh gosh, you know what I did? I put the wrong side on. I want the flower facing forward, the leaning flower. So you get to watch me make a mistake and a correction here. And I guess I'm happy this is low-tack vinyl at this stage of the game. I'm afraid I got a little ahead of myself being conscious of shooting the video, and glad I caught it before I sprayed it on there. So these are mirror images of one another. That's why my concern there. So, same thing all over again. One more time. Now my big concern here is making sure that I'm not fouling up the design. When you get out here and the part that's going to be removed, it doesn't really matter, but I guess good practice is to make sure you get it all nice and flat. And then spend a little time with squeegee, making sure that's good, and press down everywhere. You can do this right on the vinyl, but it's a little easier with this paper on top of it. Like I said, on this design, there's not a lot of small details, but there's a lot of really fine points on those petals, on the flower, and on the leaf. So I spend a little time to make sure that's all pressed down. And I'll do this again, actually, on when I get to the next stage. So same thing again. Little tape for a hinge. Boy, it'd help if I did this right. I did it upside down again, staring right at it too. Forgive my blunders, but learn from them. Now we go. I'll fold that back, and I stretch this out a little. I just pull a little bit of tension into it just to kind of square it up. Touch that down with my finger. Make sure I get all the wrinkles out. If you start good, you'll finish better, I think. So if you're trying to work wrinkles out, it can be done, but it is a little bit maddening. So if you can avoid it, do that. The good thing about this is because this is a spray mask and it's going to be taken off, adhesion problems that would come from taking it off are not going to be a problem. You'll have to trust me on that. And that actually worked out really well. As far as I know, I don't have any wrinkles in there. And of course, you know me, always feeling stuff with my hands to make sure that it's flat or whatever. We have really, the ends of our fingers and our hands are actually really sensitive to stuff like that. Okay, now comes another sort of key part. When I peel this paper off the outside, I want to make sure and not peel up the vinyl mask with it. And that's just kind of finessing it off there. I sort of work it down, and I imagine there's any number of ways you could do it, but I find this, so peel it off a little at a time. And you can see right there, if it starts to bring the mask with it, you can stop and give it another rub with your finger or the squeegee. This is another reason I wanted to take that white Scotch-Brite and polish the side so that I get a really tight bond or semi-bond, I guess you'd say, where that mask hits. I don't want paint to run under it when I spray it. And I know, by the way, this is the spray paint I'll be using. I think I forgot to just mention some of that. And right here, I can tell you, is a really, really fine point. And this is exactly what I was talking about. So I want to be sure at this stage of the game that I get that pressed right down. And that fine point comes where the leaf goes onto the stem. I guess if you haven't figured out, that's a flower, that's a stylized flower. So here I'm just going over the whole thing, making sure I've got a nice tight bond between the wood surface and this vinyl. And that tiny little tail in there, I'm actually straightening it out, and in this case I actually took my fingernail and sort of clipped off the very end of it. It won't be visible when it's done, but if you have a kind of a hangnail there, it could potentially be a problem. And I did the same thing right there. I just stuck my fingernail and took like the last 1/16 of an inch off, and then pressed it down really good. Okay, so next step is, in order for the paint to stick really well, which you want, because when you pull this off, you don't want to be pulling the paint with it. If you don't abrade this, there's a good possibility that that will happen. So I just take my fingertip and I press right there where the, and you can do this with, the vinyl will protect the rest of the surface. So you're only abrading the area where you're going to paint. And I will warn you a little here, you want to be thorough. You want to get this all abraded. So take your finger and push right up into those little points. And if you're doing this for yourself and it's your own design, maybe that isn't necessary. And on these points, I make sure and move that direction when I'm pulling this scuff pad across it, because I don't want to roll it up going the other direction. I hope that makes sense. So this gives the surface what is called in the paint world tooth. That means it's got a mechanical way for the paint to hook onto the surface. Like I said, want to make sure and get right up to the edges. I'm just getting a lot of pressure right on the end of my finger there. You can probably see that. And there's another little point there that I'm always going that direction when I'm scuffing that. And then you can blow it off or wipe it off, however it's easy. But you do want clean. And I'll use a tack rag before I spray this to make sure there's no junk in the surface. Although it's not an absolute necessity, they're dirt cheap. You can buy tack rags for not much, a couple bucks at a paint store or even home centers, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so same thing all over again. I did just exactly what I told you not to do there. I kind of snagged that thing and pulled that tip up. So I'm making plenty of mistakes here. So maybe that'll save you from having to make them. Okay, all down nice and tight. Now to abrade that surface, just like we did the other side, and then mask it, the whole rest of the speaker off. All right, now on to masking. Now I have a masking gun, but you can use anything you want really. It can be newspaper. This is masking paper, which is a little more resistant, but we're not using really hot paint. I mean, it's spray cans from the big box. So this doesn't have to be really pretty because it's just about masking off everything that you don't want paint. You can just go right on top of the spray mask and really do it any way that's convenient. And I'm kind of figuring out as I go here. It doesn't have to be pretty. That's kind of a hard thing for me to say, but because I'm always about how things look, but in this case, it's really true. Kind of like wrapping a birthday present, I guess. I'm not very good at that, though. I guess if there was a key to this, it would be that you don't want paint going anywhere you don't want it. So overkill at this point is fine. Better than wondering until you get the spray mask off if you've gotten it right. I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. The only caution I would make here is when you tip it over, you're going right onto your spray mask, so you want to be a little bit gentle and not damage that. That's where these yoga mats really come in handy, because they're soft, but they're not slippery, you know, like a towel or something would be. I've come to really like them for woodworking. I just tear these sections off a few at a time so I can just reach up there and grab them. Unfortunately, this is about how my gift wrapping looks too. And what I'm doing here is just making sure that that seam between the two pieces of paper is taped down, because conceivably you could get, and you'll see it when I turn it around, conceivably you could get spray going in and underneath that. So just a little bit of care here goes a long ways to making the results good. There you can kind of see. Again, pretty, doesn't really matter too much. At this point, I just make sure that all the folds are taped down. Again, it's probably a little bit of overkill, but it makes me feel good. There's a good example of how spray could actually get in there on the speaker itself. So that's why I take the time to tape all that down. Alrighty. So there that is, mostly ready to spray, and I will come back here in a second and I'm going to put some plastic on the table and kind of set up a little spray thing. And you'll see that. I'll be back. Alrighty, so now we're to the spray stage, and this is a tack rag. Tack rag is just a little tacky. I don't know what it's got on it, but I like to tack all that. And what it does is pick up any dust and debris that might be in there. I'm going to do the other side. And now I'm going to turn on a fan, and so it'll obscure the mic a little bit, I think. It's spray painting. I don't probably have to show you a whole lot about technique. One thing that I will say though is the first coat I put on, I dust on really lightly because I want it to kind of glue down all the fine features there. If I put on a really wet coat, it wants to run under the masking tape, and I want to get that sealed first, and then I can coat on top of it because I want a really crisp line on the design. So here we go. Now I'm doing this inside with a fan, so I'm going to put on a respirator, and I will spray about 4 coats on. The next one I'll dust on a little bit heavier, and then I'll put 2 wetter coats on. And it doesn't really matter. This stuff dries really fast, I found out when I did the other one. So the key is to kind of get that edge of the vinyl sealed and then put the heavier coats on. So there I have the dust coats on. It's been a couple of minutes, and this is not tacky. Like I said, this paint dries really quickly. Now full cure would be probably 24 hours, but so that's the dust coat, and that just kind of seals everything down. At least that's the way I look at it. And next I'll put on a couple of wetter coats, and then we're done. The coverage is pretty good with this, but what I don't want is I want to keep the edge between the original finish and the stencil kind of to a minimum. In other words, I don't want to build up a whole lot of depth of paint. You will be able to feel it, but the bigger it is, the more obvious it is. So here we go. All right, I put 1 more wet coat, or actually 2, I guess. 2 more wet coats on there, and now I'll do final coat, and then I'll let it dry for about an hour. You do want to take masking off. Don't want to let it dry overnight or something like that, because you want that edge where the masking meets the finish to be somewhat pliable, and it'll get brittler, more brittle as the paint cures. And then so in about an hour I'll take the masking off, and then I'll let that sit overnight, and then I'll buff it with a microfiber cloth. But I'll show all that. So here we go, one more time. Alrighty, so it's been about an hour, and now comes the unveiling. You want to be a little careful here. I mean, I'm going to take all the masking off and then pull the spray shield off, the part I had I want to say template, but it's not a template. It's a stencil. This is always the fun part of masking, painting, I guess, when you're masking stuff off. Because it looks pretty bad with the masking all on there. Let's see if I can do this some way where it's easy for you all to see. I don't suppose it really matters what end you start at. You could start at the bottom or the top. But I always like to watch it as I start to peel it off and make sure that the paint isn't picking up with the masking. It shouldn't. I mean, we've done everything right to this point. But it's worth eyeballing it as it comes off. And you probably can't see it with the camera, but as I pull that off, I'm seeing the adhesive, the low-tack adhesive, kind of pull apart there. And that's normal. So I guess what I'm saying is easy does it on this part. Especially where all this detail is. And there you get to see what it'll look like in the end game. So looks like the other one over there. I'll go ahead and pull the other one off, and then I might put a little bit of a warning here. Like I said, I am going to let this sit overnight. There's a difference between paint being dry and paint being cured. And what I don't want to do is rub this until the paint is actually cured. And so once I pull this off, I'm just going to let this sit overnight. And then tomorrow, so you can't see it on the camera, I suspect, but where this stencil met the original finish, there's a little bit of an edge as the paint kind of rolls up on that edge, and that will be removed with a light buffing with a microfiber cloth. And unlike some other cloths, it won't hurt the, this has a glossy finish to it, and it won't affect that. Paint like this seems to have a lot of pigment in it, and I guess that's what gives it the metallic quality. Okay, so that'll sit for a day, and I'll be back tomorrow and show you how I buff it. I mean, that's really simple, and I'll see you then. Bye. And I'm back, and it's the next day. And this has had overnight to cure, which probably gets it 80% cured. Like I've said before, difference between paint dry to touch and paint being cured And because this is air dry, the finish on this speaker, I don't know exactly what it is, but I assume because most commercial finishes are what they call catalyzed, which means you have a chemical process taking place that makes the surface hard and durable. With things like spray paint, that's not the case. It just air dries, so the solvents in the paint evaporate, and it takes longer time for those to completely cure. So there's your lesson in paint for the day. What I'm looking to do at this point is two things. First of all, sometimes a spray mask will leave just a little bit of adhesive residue. Usually you can see it. Well, always you can see it. And where it shows up is typically in little areas where the mask is, what I want to say, the lines are really fine. So I'm looking to take that off, and then also, when you paint anything with a mask, the paint sort of rolls up on the edge of the spray mask or the masking tape or whatever you're doing, and that leaves a kind of a hard line. Now, you're not going to eliminate that, because in order to make it go away, you'd have to clear over this, and that's just not really necessary. I mean, this isn't an automobile, or it isn't your kitchen table. This is a design that is not going to need a lot of wear resistance. So anyway, I want to minimize that. I mean, you can still feel it, but I want to break that edge, that sharp edge where that rolls up the masking tape off. And it's easier to do when the paint is dry. So the way I do that is I look, and I'm going to kind of do this so I can see and you can see, and look for any of that paint residue, and you can get after it if you need to in sort of a concentrated way. And once you've gotten all that, if there is any, then I just take the rag and buff it like I was buffing wax on my car. And of course, in this case, then you get to the other side, do the same thing. This looks pretty clean, so in this case, I just go over it, and I'm putting some pressure on it, but it's not high pressure. And because of the softness of microfiber, it tends to polish things as opposed to abrading them. So there you have it. That's finished design. Put the other one up here just so you can see. So these are mirror images of one another. And they're also mirror images on side to side. So once again, I'm going to talk about the spray mask. How do you do this if you're going to do it yourself? And I use a local Signs Now shop, and what I've done several times with them now, and it's gotten pretty easy because they kind of know me and know what I want, but I send them something called an EPS file, and with that I tell them the size that I want the spray mask, and actually I send the file, the design itself is the size I want, so I just need to tell them how big to make the mask that's surrounding that. And I send them that, in a couple days they call me and it's done. So what you need to specify there, first of all, you need to find a design that you like, and then you can take it to them and say, this is what I'm going to do. And what I specify to them, because they're used to cutting vinyl to go on signs and things like that. Now those are permanent installations. What I'm doing here is a spray mask, so the term they use is a low tack vinyl, which means it's not real aggressive adhesive, and it's designed, I think, specifically for spray mask, but I don't know. Anyway, low tack vinyl, tell them you're doing a spray mask, you're going to spray over and pull it off, they'll know what to sell you. And If you like this design, I happen to have drawn this myself, so we're not infringing on any artist's work when I tell you this. If you want this design and it will be drawn in this size, you can email me. My email address is always in the description. I occasionally get people commenting, how do we get in touch with you? The best way is email. And I will send you the file. It will come as an EPS file. If you don't have a way to modify that, you don't need to worry about it, because you can take it to the sign shop and they can work with that. I think that's an Illustrator file, Adobe Illustrator. I'm not 100% sure on that, but anyway, that's how, or what I could offer you in this case. I mean, besides the little instruction, maybe I can offer you the design. And that's all just me wanting to kind of feed the DIY world. And so if you want it, email me. If you have questions, you can put them in the comments, or you can email me. And I think that wraps it up. So these things, I mean, this was just an exercise in how you could take an existing product and sort of tailor it, which is kind of always my thing. I look at things and wonder about how I could modify them to suit the things that I like. And I guess that's what I'm encouraging you to do too, is to you know, do things that you like and personalize it to your own taste. So that's it for this one. And if you have suggestions or things you'd like to see me do, be sure and let me know. Tell me in the comments or something like that, and I will see what I can do to get it done. I know there's one that I promised to make and actually shot a whole bunch of video, and that was about vacuum bag veneering. And I actually did a whole bunch of stuff. As I started to edit it, it was unwatchable. So maybe I'll redo that. So if that's your request, I'll get to it. I really will. Understand that, you know, for me, being jobless now, I kind of spread my time around a lot of different things. And in fact, might mention something here and then I'll shut up, and or I guess if you don't want to listen to me talk anymore, you can just end the video. But lately, I have been getting into something called sprint boat racing, which, if you haven't seen this, it is one of the most exciting motorsports I have ever witnessed. And I'm kind of a big motorsports guy. I like circle track racing. I autocross a little car. But this is exciting. These boats race on a course. It's a timed run, so it's not a side-by-side race. And it is thrilling to watch. I've now been to several. It's only in the Northwest part of the United States. There's only 3 tracks that exist. It originated in New Zealand, and it is just incredible to see how these boats hook up in corners. Now, I spent a good part of my career around boats, not like this so much, but so I know a little something about hull dynamics and how these things work, and it is pretty incredible. So they use a jet drive, but I won't go way into that. What maybe the thing for me to do would be, I'm going to link to some video of this, and if you like this kind of thing, you can find more of it on YouTube, both in the United States and in New Zealand and Australia. And if you like it, you can watch it. If you really like it, you can come to an event. My partner and I have been going to events this summer and really enjoying it. So anyway, folks, I appreciate you always listen to me and yap, I know. And I'll see you next go round. And until then, you know the drill. Be nice to your neighbor. See ya.